There are literally hundreds of different match types in the history of professional wrestling, a seemingly never-ending backlog of intense, dangerous, and sometimes wacky rule sets and locations, where the fake sport of fake kings does its fake business. There is a rich history, if you can call it that, of classic gimmick wrestling matches that goes unused in wrestling games, a deep well of options that remains untapped. We're not talking about your standard falls count anywhere or last man standing matches, the stuff we see in every video game. Now we're going deep into the wrestling vault today. We're Operation Sports, I'm Matt Ederer, and here are 50 different match types that WWE 2K22 could have. Now let's talk some rules off the top of the list here. The word could is doing a lot of work. I'm not reporting anything or saying that any of these have been thought of. I'm just saying that I'm stunned that none of these matches have appeared in a WWE 2K series lately. Also, we're going to break this down into categories, with each category getting either 5 or 10 examples. It's not a straight top 50 countdown, but I am leaving the most important and best one until the end, just for dramatic purposes. We're going to give you the name of the match, the special rules, and a quick example of where and when these matches may have occurred in history. Let's start with current day WWE. Here are 5 examples of matches that show up on current-ish WWE TV, but not in the 2K series. Number 1. Blank on a pole match. A blank on a pole match is a match where there is a giant pole in the corner with a weapon hanging off of it, oftentimes a bat, club, or some type of musical instrument. It's mostly a standard rules match, with the small caveat that if you climb the pole and procure the weapon, you're allowed to use it to destroy your opponent with impunity. This was most recently seen on WWE TV on the November 2nd, 2020 edition of WWE Raw, where Jeff Hardy defeated Elias in a guitar on a pole match. Number 2. Lumberjack Match. A lumberjack match is one where the ringside area is surrounded by other wrestlers, or lumberjacks, who are permitted to attack either wrestler should they fall to the floor. It's not the most recent example probably, but honestly the most infamous lumberjack match in WWE history might have occurred a very short time ago, the zombie lumberjack match between Damian Priest and The Miz at WrestleMania Backlash from May 16th, 2021. Number 3. I Quit Match. An I Quit match is, as the name suggests, a match that can only end when one wrestler says the words I quit. There have been many memorable, chaotic, and downright violent I Quit matches in WWE history. The most recent one at this time was on October 25th, 2020, when Roman Reigns defeated cousin Jey Uso in the first ever Hell in a Cell I Quit match. It's always been difficult to pull off I Quit matches in WWE video games, but hey, they've done it before. I say, take another shot at it. Don't quit on the I Quit. Number 4. Inferno Match. Now, to be fair, an Inferno Match technically hasn't happened since 2006, when Kane, loser of the first 3 Inferno matches, finally got that babyface W, setting MVP on fire in a true feel-good moment. Just kidding, poor MVP, he didn't deserve that. Anyway, we did recently see the Firefly Inferno match, wherein Randy Orton turned the feed from the zombie character into the charred, overcooked hamburger zombie character. Anyway, the Inferno match is a match where you set your opponent on fire to win. They used to do these a lot more than they do now. I wonder why. Number 5. Special Referees Match. To be honest, I didn't play 2K21 enough to see if they actually had special referee matches. I refuse to go back to it, I apologize. But these tend to come and go from wrestling games as the wind blows, and I think special referee matches deserve to stay. Special referee matches are quite simply a match where the player controls the referee rather than the wrestler. Or in some cases, multiple players control multiple referees and have their own match, which entirely distracts from the actual match. Alright, moving on. Here are 5 match types that we've seen in NXT or NXT UK lately, but not in the WWE 2K series. Number 6. Heritage Cup. The WWE's take on British round system wrestling. Heritage Cup rules are somewhat complicated, but they almost always make for exciting matches on the NXT UK brand. Quickly, matches are 6 3-minute rounds. 2 out of 3 falls. Matches can be won by pinfall, submission, or countout. If you win a fall, the round is over, and the match ends once a wrestler wins 2 falls. But if all 6 rounds are completed, whoever is ahead on falls will win the match. And in the event of a disqualification or knockout, the match instantly ends without the need for a second or third fall. All of that is a complicated way to say it's 2 out of 3 falls with rounds, but these are really entertaining and interesting matches with a slight sporting twist. Number 7. Gauntlet Eliminator Match. The Gauntlet Eliminator is a 5-man, no-rules Royal Rumble in a nutshell. 2 guys start in the ring. Every 4 minutes, another competitor enters the ring, and the only way to be eliminated is by pinfall or submission. The last wrestler standing wins the Gauntlet Eliminator. The most recent example of this match type was at NXT TakeOver Stand and Deliver Night 1, April 7th, 2021, won by the colossal Bronson Reed. Number 8. The Fight Pit. A steel cage match without ropes or turnbuckles, and with a catwalk surrounding the top of the cage for cool dives and suplexes. There are no pinfalls. This match can only be won by submission or knockout. The most recent Fight Pit match came on January 20th, 2021, where Timothy Thatcher defeated Tommaso Ciampa by submission on NXT TV. Number 9. A barbed wire weapons cage match. Most recently seen in the final fall of the 2 out of 3 falls match between Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano at NXT TakeOver Toronto 2, August 10th, 2019. This is, as the name suggests, a steel cage match where the top of the cage is covered in barbed wire and various weapons. You cannot win this match by escape, can only win by pinfall or submission. Number 10. War Games. Most recently seen at NXT War Games, December 6, 2020, there have been numerous different takes on the War Game match in history. The basic gist of the match is, there are 2 teams of 4 or 5 wrestlers, 1 member of each team starts. Entrants alternate between teams every few minutes, giving one team a temporary advantage in terms of numbers. Once every person in the match has entered, the match can then officially end. Traditionally, but not always, NWA and WCW War Games ended via submission, submit or surrender. They also featured a roof on the cage. WWE War Games matches can be ended by pinfall or submission, not just submission, and there is no roof on the WWE War Games cage. For traditional War Games rules, consult Tony Khan and AEW. The pandemic era of wrestling ushered in a new wave of cinematic matches. Due to the lack of live crowds, WWE was able to play more with production and have created new types of matches that, while they may not work well in front of a real audience, actually could translate pretty well to a video game. So here are 5 examples of cinematic matches that could work pretty well in WWE 2K22. Number 11. Corporate Ladder Match. One of the better cinematic matches was the Corporate Ladder Match, taking place on May 10th, 2020. In this match, a group of wrestlers started in the lobby of WWE's corporate office, Titan Towers, and fought to be the first to make it all the way to the roof, where a ring was randomly placed with a briefcase hanging above it. A pretty good and entertaining match if you ignore the fact that Rey Mysterio was murdered. Number 12. Swamp Fight. Not one of the better cinematic matches in WWE history. At the accurately named WWE The Horror Show at Extreme Rules, July 19th, 2020, Bray Wyatt defeated Braun Strowman in a swamp fight. Perhaps I'm in the minority in this one, but I think a backstage match in a swamp area filled with ghouls and, insects, it could actually be pretty fun. Maybe I'm wrong on this one. They can't all be winners. Pour one out for Braun Strowman. Number 13, Performance Center Match. On NXT TV, April 8th, 2020, Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa had a cinematic match in the WWE Performance Center. It was dubbed One Final Beat. The match itself was divisive, but I think we could all agree it would be fun to do a Falls Count Anywhere in the Performance Center. You could call it a One Final Beat match if you want, but nobody would remember what the heck that was. I vote to rechristen this the Performance Center match. make it a falls count anywhere, empty arena concept. Number 14, Haunted House of Terror match. The Haunted House of Terror match was a cinematic match that started out in a haunted house and ended in the Capitol Wrestling Center, where Cameron Grimes was choked out and surrounded by zombies and smoke. Lots of zombies on the list today. This was seen for the first and hopefully last time on NXT Halloween Havoc, October 28th, 2020. Again, maybe it's just me, but I want to have a Falls Count Anywhere match in a haunted house. If 2K Sports can give me a witch that flies around the NBA 2K neighborhood for some reason, they can give me a haunted house match in the wrestling game. Number 15, Boneyard Match. Everybody's favorite WWE cinematic match, and birthplace of one of the great memes of 2020. The Boneyard Match was the main event of WrestleMania 36 Night 1, April 4th, 2021, between The Undertaker and AJ Styles. A stone cold WWE classic. This is actually on YouTube if you're into that sort of thing. Of all of these locations, I want to do a hardcore match in The Undertaker's compound the most. But that's enough about cinematic matches forever. Back before the days of the global pandemic, WWE used to perform live shows in front of crowds of people. It was less fashionable then to shoot an entire movie-style fight scene at a random location. But that didn't stop them from trying. Here are 5 non-cinematic location matches that WWE 2K could bring back. Number 16, Backlot Brawl. The most recent NXT Backlot Brawl match was at NXT In Your House, June 7th, 2020. But perhaps the most famous one came from WrestleMania 12, where Rowdy Roddy Piper and Goldust had a memorable fight scene that ended with Goldust wearing women's underwear and WWE splicing in footage of the O.J. Simpson chase 2 years after the fact. Oh, the 1990s. Number 17, Barroom Brawl. Follow me on this one. It's a brawl in a bar. The most recent bar fight type of match occurred in July 24th, 2020, when Sheamus and Jeff Hardy tastelessly feuded over Jeff Hardy's alcoholism. Hey, I guess wrestling has always been scummy. It wasn't just in the 90s. Number 18, Boiler Room Brawl. Follow me on this one. Boiler Room Brawls are matches that take place in the boiler room of an arena. Historically, the winner of the match is the first person to escape the boiler room. The most recent WWE Boiler Room Brawl appears to have occurred on December 20th, 1999, where Triple H, Billy Gunn, Road Dogg, and the Mean Street Posse all beat up Mankind while dressed as Santa Claus. The best Boiler Room Brawl match was probably the first one, SummerSlam 1996, Undertaker vs. Mankind. But I've also been partial to the second Boiler Room Brawl match from Backlash 1999, Mankind vs. The Big Show. As an aside, Backlash 1999, one of the great underrated WWE pay-per-views of all time. If you haven't seen that show in a while, check that one out. The next 2 matches are straight out of Vince Russo's WCW, a Jerry Springer fever dream of racist, sexist trash TV. Number 19, Graveyard Match. WCW Bash at the Beach, July 9th, 2000. The show made infamous by the Vince Russo, Jeff Jarrett, Hulk Hogan storyline. People forget that one of the worst wrestling matches of all time also happened on this show, Sting vs. Vampiro in a graveyard match. The rules of this particular match were that the match starts in a graveyard, and the first wrestler to arrive to the arena and enter the ring is declared the winner. Sure, why not? Number 20, Junkyard Invitational. Bash at the Beach had some crazy stuff happen in its history. On July 11th, 1999, at Bash at the Beach, we saw the first, and let's hope only, Junkyard Invitational in history. This was a match with multiple people fighting in a junkyard, and the only way to win the match was to escape the junkyard. It was a terrible match that led to numerous legitimate serious injuries, and according to wrestling reporter Dave Meltzer, cost around $100,000 to shoot. These are all negatives, yes. My counterpoint: I want to have a video game wrestling match inside of a junkyard. I want to hit people with broken car parts, and I do not apologize for that. Now let us never speak of the Junkyard Invitational again. Sometimes, rather than using novelty locations to spice things up, WWE would use novelty weapons. Here are 5 examples of matches with fun or festive novelty weapons. Number 21, Symphony of Destruction Match. On November 30th, 2020, Jeff Hardy defeated Elias in a Symphony of Destruction match, a match where musical instruments surround the ringside area to be used as weapons. Tell me you wouldn't want to run your buddy face first into a drum set at ringside. Number 22, Good Housekeeping Match. In late 1999, Jeff Jarrett was arguably in the hottest run of his WWE career, getting nuclear-level hatred from crowds for his misogynistic character. Jarrett would deride women, saying their place was in the kitchen and such, and this of course culminated in the Good Housekeeping Match, where the ring was surrounded by household items such as an ironing board or flour, all of which was legal to be used as weapons. That's right, the most deadly weapon of all, flour. The only Good Housekeeping match in WWE history took place at No Mercy on October 17, 1999. Chyna defeated Double J Jeff Jarrett, banishing him from the WWE for 2 decades. Number 23, Chairs Match. Shout out the lamest stipulation in the TLC rotation. So in 2009, WWE started producing a dedicated tables, ladders, and chairs pay-per-view. They already had tables matches, ladders matches, tables, ladders, and chairs matches. There was only one thing missing, one logical conclusion to draw. The chairs match. A match where the ringside area is surrounded by 100 chairs, and you can use those chairs to hurt your opponent. If you use any other piece of furniture, maybe a nice Chesterfield or an ottoman, you will be disqualified. I guess it's not that much more ridiculous than a tables match. By my count, the most recent chairs match came at TLC December 16th, 2018, when Rey Mysterio defeated Randy Orton. It's possible I've forgotten 1 or 2 out there. It might surprise you to note there aren't many best of chair matches lists out on the internet. Number 24, Trick or Street Fight. A Halloween-themed match where various spooky weapons are around ringside, all of which legal. Smash your opponent with a jack-o'-lantern, a scarecrow, or the deadliest Halloween weapon of all, an apple with a razor blade inside. By my count, the most recent Trick or Street Fight occurred on WWE Raw October 31st, 2016, Enzo Amore defeating Luke Gallows. 25. Miracle on 34th Street Fight. Similar to the Halloween match, this is a Christmas-themed street fight with various holiday weapons, such as candy cane kendo sticks, surround the ring. The most recent Miracle on 34th Street Fight occurred December 29th, 2019, when Heavy Machinery defeated the Revival. Shout out Randy Orton vs. David Otunga, the greatest holiday hardcore match of all time. The next 10 matches could be described as container matches. Matches where you have to throw your opponent inside or on top of some sort of bag, box, gurney, or cover them in some kind of substance to win. For example, number 26, Gulf of Mexico Match. In this case, to win the match, you had to throw your opponent into the Gulf of Mexico. A lot of these are going to be self-explanatory, guys. I don't know what to tell you. The most recent and sadly the only Gulf of Mexico match took place on the WWE version of ECW TV, February 5th, 2008, with CM Punk defeating Chavo Guerrero. Number 27, Dumpster Match. A match that is won by throwing your opponent or opponents into a dumpster. For a long time it seemed as though the dumpster match from WrestleMania 14 would be the only in WWE history. Thankfully, for all the dumpster match truthers out there, WWE would return to this gimmick on April 24th, 2017, when Braun Strowman defeated Kalisto, 2 men with bright futures in WWE. Number 28, Hog Pen Match. Here's one they didn't go back to. At WWE In Your House 5, December 17th, 1995, Triple H defeated Henry O. Godwin in the only hog pen match in WWE history. A match where, you guessed it, you had to throw your opponent into a hog pen to win. I remember actually loving this match when it happened. To be fair, I was 6 years old. Number 29, Bloodbath Match. On the September 14th, 1998 edition of Monday Night Raw, Edge and Gangrel had the only bloodbath match in WWE history. This is not to be confused with the first blood match, where the winner is the first person to make their opponent bleed. Those are a dime a dozen in video games. A bloodbath match is when somebody covers their opponent in a pre-existing vat of blood. Again, it was the 90s. We all had vats of blood lying around. Number 30, stretcher match. A stretcher match is won by placing your opponent onto a stretcher and wheeling them past a certain point. As far as I can tell, the most recent stretcher match in WWE was on the June 16, 2014 episode of Monday Night Raw, where John Cena defeated Kane. Number 31, ambulance match. A match that is won by throwing your opponent into an ambulance and closing the door. The most recent ambulance match was on WWE Clash of Champions September 27, 2020, where Drew McIntyre defeated Randy Orton. Number 32, a last ride match. This is a combination of the previous two matches. A match that is won by throwing your opponent into a hearse and driving them past a certain point out of the arena. So I guess theoretically, if the wrestler were to escape the moving hearse before it made it out of the arena, the match would still continue. The most recent, and by my research only last ride match I could find, came at No Mercy, October 3rd, 2004, where John Bradshaw Layfield defeated The Undertaker. Speaking of Undertaker matches, number 33, Buried Alive match. These just keep getting spookier. A buried alive match is one when the opponent is thrown into a grave and their body is submerged in dirt. There have only been 5 buried alive matches in WWE by my count, the most recent coming at bragging rights, October 24, 2010, when Kane defeated Daniel Bryan. Number 34, casket match. A casket or coffin match, of course, is a match that is won by throwing your opponent into a casket and closing the lid. The most recent WWE casket match came on April 27th, 2018, from the WWE Greatest Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia. The Undertaker defeated current AEW TNT champion Miro, then of course known as Rusev. I have zero recollection of this match at all, but I'm sure it was a disaster. Number 35, Chamber of Horrors match. Okay, this is the last spooky one, I promise. On October 27, 1991, WCW gave us the first and only Chamber of Horrors match. The Chamber of Horrors was comprised of a huge cage that surrounded the ring, with a second smaller cage in the middle of the ring, and an electric chair inside of the smaller cage. The only way to win the match was to put one of your opponents into the electric chair and flip the switch, presumably killing them live on pay-per-view from the UTC Arena in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Sting, El Gigante, and the Steiner brothers defeated Scott Hall, Cactus Jack, Abdullah the Butcher, and Vader when Rick Steiner belly-to-belly suplexed Abdullah into the chair, and Cactus Jack flipped the switch anyway, apparently not realizing that it was his tag team partner in the chair and not his opponent. One of the absolute worst, most god-awful 15-minute stretches in the history of pro wrestling. I want to do it on a video game. Let's stick with WCW, where the big boys play. Look at the adjective. Big. Again, I'm not saying these were good wrestling matches at the time, or even that they would be fun to play now, although I do kind of think that. But I'm just saying that I'm shocked a video game hasn't tried to recreate these yet. Number 36, Ready to Rumble cage match. At WCW Slamboree May 7th, 2000, we saw one of the most convoluted, reviled, and truly hated wrestling matches of all time. A triple threat, 3-tiered cage match featuring Jeff Jarrett, Diamond Dallas Page, and the guy from Scary Movie. Here are the rules of the Ready to Rumble cage match. The WCW title is suspended from the roof, and the first one to retrieve it wins the title. Here's where it gets good. All 3 wrestlers start in a ring surrounded by a steel cage. On top of that cage is a second cage, full of various weapons. On top of that cage is a third cage, the size of an average half bathroom, full of guitars for some reason. The object is to make your way through all 3 cages, end up on the top of the third cage, retrieve the title belt hanging from the roof, and try not to kill the wrestling business forever. Number 37, WCW Thundercage. Based of course on the Mad Max theories, Thundercage was a giant curved steel cage that housed no DQ 6-man tag team matches. Teams could not escape the cage, and matches were won by pinfall and submission only. WCW actually busted this gimmick out on TV a few times, but perhaps the most famous example of the Thundercage came at Super Brawl 4, February 20th, 1994, when Sting, Brian Pillman, and Dusty Rhodes defeated Rick Rude, Paul Orndorff, and stunning Steve Austin. Wow, what a lineup! Number 38, Tower of Doom. At the NWA Great American Bash, July 10th, 1988, we saw another one of the most convoluted and reviled matches in the history of pro wrestling, the Tower of Doom. It's similar to the Ready to Rumble cage, but in reverse, and with tag teams. It's actually somehow more complicated than the last one. Here are the rules. Teams of 5, and the first team to entirely escape the Tower of Doom wins. Which sounds easy, but the match is contested in a 3-layer steel cage, a big cage surrounding the ring, a smaller cage on top of that cage, and an even smaller third cage sitting on top of the second cage. 2 wrestlers start the match in the top cage, which for the record is so high in the air that it's literally in the lighting rig and it's impossible to see the wrestlers. Every 2 minutes, new wrestlers enter the match by climbing a humongous ladder to the very top level in the third cage. When the buzzer sounds for a new wrestler to enter, a trap door opens in the top cages, allowing wrestlers to escape to a lower level cage. So you start at the top, you have to work your way to the bottom. It was a terrible match, it was a terrible idea. Scared and confused wrestlers threw weak punches in front of scared and confused fans. It was impossible to see the action, especially on a 1988 TV, but why would you want to see it anyway? I actually understand why this one is not in video games, or why it has never been attempted ever again in wrestling, but tell me you wouldn't play it just once. Number 39, Scaffold Match. This one is less complicated. 2 or 4 men fight on a scaffold. To win the match, you must throw your opponent off of the scaffold. The most famous example of this type of match is probably Starrcade Night of the Skywalkers, November 27th, 1986, where both the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette, well, I guess all 3, took the scaffold bump, with Jim Cornette blowing out his ACL in the process. Number 40, San Francisco 49er Match. The all-time Vince Russo acid trip. This match combines a ladder match with a blank on a pole match. There are 4 poles, 1 in every corner, and there is a box suspended from each pole. 3 of the boxes contain either weapons or gag items, Vince Russo nonsense, what have you. 1 of the boxes contains the title belt. The match ends when a wrestler can climb a pole, open a box, and correctly find the title belt. The first and only San Francisco 49er match occurred on the December 2nd, 2000 edition of WCW Nitro. 3 months later, WCW went out of business. We're in the home stretch now, so let's quickly go through some matches that have been pro wrestling staples for generations. Shout out to the NWA. Number 41, Texas Death Match. A hardcore match meets a last man standing match. Traditionally, Texas Death Match rules are that falls count anywhere, but after a fall is obtained, the losing wrestler has 10 seconds to get to their feet. If they do, the match continues. If they don't, the match is over. Basically, it's a last man standing match where you have to score a pin or submission to start the 10-second count. Number 42, Strap Match. A match where 2 wrestlers are attached at the wrist with a leather strap. The strap can be used to hit, choke, or generally upset your opponent. There are variations to the strap match where, in order to win, a wrestler must touch all 4 corners in succession. But those rules are stupid. They are dumb, and they make for bad matches. The best strap matches are ones that end by pinfall or submission. Number 43, Bullrope Match. Similar to a strap match, but instead of a leather strap, wrestlers are tied together by a giant bull rope with a huge cowbell in the middle. You may have guessed that the cowbell is, of course, eligible to be used as a weapon. Perhaps the most famous bull rope match of my lifetime was the Dusty Rhodes vs. Steve Corino bull rope match from ECW. I'm sure there are many in the history of wrestling that I haven't seen, and I am ignorant of. Randy Orton also had one with Dusty Rhodes. It wasn't quite as good. But the bull rope match is a classic Rhodes family gimmick. I look forward to Cody vs. Shaq Bullrope match in 2023. Number 44, Dog Collar Match. Once again, similar to the strap or bullrope match, but instead of a rope or a strap, wrestlers each wear dog collars around their neck and are attached to each other with a steel chain. The Roddy Piper Greg Valentine dog collar match from Starrcade 1983 is definitely the most famous and to this day easily the best and most violent example of this match. Number 45, Flag Match. Capture the flag, but in a wrestling ring. A wrestler or a team of wrestlers each attempt to defend their flag. The first wrestler to obtain the opponent's flag wins the match. This concept works far better with tag teams, where there are people on the apron to actually defend the flag. Every singles flag match I've ever seen should have ended in the first minute, after the first big move. But I digress. And finally, to close us out, here are 5 matches that we'll probably never see again in real life, but that I definitely want to see again, or for the first time in a video game. Number 46, the Punjabi Prison Match. The rules. There are 2 separate cages made of bamboo surrounding the ring. The first person to escape both cages wins the match. However, the first cage has doors which can be opened at the wrestler's request. If a wrestler requests the door to be opened, he has 1 minute to escape it. If the other wrestler stops him from escaping, that door is shut and locked for the remainder of the match. So the door stuff is needlessly complicated, and don't get me wrong, every single one of the 3 Punjabi prison matches have been awful. The most recent one, July 23rd, 2017 WWE Battleground Randy Orton vs. Jinder Mahal, was the least terrible, to be fair. But I don't want a 5-star classic, I want to have a Punjabi prison match. Number 47. Kennel from Hell Match. Speaking of things that are not classic, Kennel from Hell might be the single worst wrestling match of all time, which is saying a lot. The rules are very similar to the Punjabi prison. The ring, surrounded by a steel cage and a Hell in a Cell structure. The winner is the first person to escape both cages. Also, the ring is patrolled by guard dogs for some reason. On September 26, 1999, Al Snow and the Big Boss Man had the worst match in professional wrestling history inside Kennel from Hell. Sadly, I can't say it's the only WWE match I've ever seen to feature dog poo. Oh no, I've just realized in this moment that I've wasted my entire life. Anyway, it's easy to see why this was an absolute disaster, IRL, and should never be tried again. But I'm actually shocked that no video game has rolled the dice on the Kennel from Hell. Number 48, ECW Stairway to Hell Match. A ladder match with a weapon hanging from the top of the ladder, rather than a title. This is similar to a blank on a pole match, but with a key difference. A blank on a pole match tends to follow normal wrestling rules, other than being able to use the weapon on a pole. Stairway to Hell matches are completely no disqualification, with a crazy weapon that happens to be hanging from the roof. This concept was done fairly often in WCW and ECW in the late 1990s, perhaps most notable on January 10, 1998, when the Sandman apparently took 2 hits of acid and wrestled Sabu at ECW House Party 1998 in a Stairway to Hell match. His words, not mine. Number 49, ECW High Incident Scaffold Match. Combining the power of the NWA Scaffold match and the WWE Tables match, the ECW Scaffold match at High Incident, October 26, 1996, was responsible for one of the coolest wrestling visuals of the 90s, with Brian Lee flying through a impossible stack of tables. I'm not sure if it's safer to fall through the tables than an empty ring. I guess a lot could go wrong with table legs breaking strangely and so forth. I don't know, guys. We're 49 entries into this thing. Let's keep it moving with the number 1 selection, the single biggest omission from 2K games over the past few years. Number 50, the Championship Scramble. The GOAT video game match type, Championship Scrambles combined Royal Rumble, Hardcore, and Iron Man matches to produce a fun, unique match type that is tailor-made for video games. The rules. The match contains 5 wrestlers. It's a 20-minute time limit. It starts with 2 of the 5 in the ring, and every 5 minutes, a new wrestler enters the ring. Now, anytime a wrestler scores a pinfall or submission on anyone, they become the interim or unofficial champion. The interim champion does not have to be involved in the fall to lose the title at any point. So, if Chris Jericho and MJF are fighting and Sammy Guevara comes in the match, Chris Jericho is champion, MJF can pin Sammy Guevara, and MJF would win the title, theoretically. Anyway, once 20 minutes is up, whoever is the interim champion wins the match, wins the title, and is king of the mountain. In real life, these matches were a little confusing. I think they've become slightly underrated. This wasn't Tower of Doom. They weren't terrible. They only happened once at WWE Unforgiven September 7th, 2008, but they were all pretty entertaining. I understand why WWE thought they were too complicated and maybe not worth explaining anymore. However, in video game form, forget it. This is the all-time GOAT WWE video game match type. It combines the fun of Royal Rumbles, hitting each other with weapons, falls count anywhere crazy nonsense, and of course, dramatic comebacks. These matches were great for shaking up your universe mode, just having fun with your friends, beating kids online. It was just really fun in general. I believe these were removed in WWE 2K13 or 14, I'm not quite sure. All I know is I haven't loved a WWE 2K game since. Okay, we did it, everybody. Thank you so much if you made it to the end of this. So, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions with what to do with the rest of my life, drop us a line at the Operation Sports forums, over on Twitter at Operation Sports, or down there in the comment section below. My name is Matthew Ederer, and if you liked me, well, you can hear more of me every Wednesday morning when I host the NXT Talk podcast with my good buddy Boris Aguilar over at Sunday Night's Main Event Radio. You can find us at Patreon, at Sunday Night's Main Event Radio every Wednesday morning, or wherever you find your podcasts a couple days later. Just type in NXT TLK and we should come up, and perhaps on the It's Canon podcast feed, maybe in other places. We're working on it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Stay safe out there. Dig it.